All right, today we are going to Abu Simbel to look at the Temple of Ramses II. So, like I was saying, he became the pharaoh at the age of 20. He died at 86. So, he had a very long reign, 66 years. He outlived his 12 oldest sons, and Ramses brought in an age of prosperity to Egypt. And he created a lot of restoration projects on the Great Pyramids, and he had over 100 children. Can you imagine that? I'm having a tough time just raising two. All right, and then before the pharaoh, the pirates were causing a bunch of trouble. Oh yeah, here's a fun story. So before he became a pharaoh, pirates were raiding along the coast, and Ramses and a small group of elite royal soldiers sailed out, defeated them, cut off their arms, and conscripted the rest. So Ramses was a bit of a badass. He conquered a lot during his reign, and he was a propaganda machine. He did a lot of propaganda art. So he created art that showed that he was a great. And when he conquered his foes, he made them grovel at his feet while he got lap dances. And he crossed out the names of previous pharaohs on their temples, and he wrote his own name in them. So he did a little bit of damnatio memoriae himself. All right, so we're going to take a look at the Temple of Ramses II. And as we get close, there's a second temple next to it, and that's for his wife there. But let's take a look at. So it is at Abu Simbel, and he has four Colossus sculptures of himself. That's how much of a narcissist he was. Not only did he have sculptures made of him that were like really larger than life, but he had four of him in the front. And anyways, this is called a sunken relief. So the mountain comes out and they carve away at the mountain. Actually, this is in a cliffside, and then this computer image gives you an idea of what was on the inside of the temple. So it's a rather small temple, but it has a giant facade on the front. Does everybody know what the word facade means? Facade. What's a facade? It's the front of a building. All right. So where is the facade for Cy Falls? Like what sculpture is there at the facade? Right, so where the eagle is, and you have these big arches, and that is what the facade is. And we're going to look at this little tiny little room back here. It has four sculptures of gods. It has Ptah, Ramses II, Ra, and Amun. Now, the light, when the sun sets, the light goes into the temple and shines on the figures in the back. And the axis of the temple it was positioned so that on October 22nd and February 22nd, the rays of the sun would penetrate the sanctuary and illuminate the sculptures on the back wall. And it would illuminate three of them. You can see the one on the left is still in shadow, and that's done on purpose. So the three on the right catch the sun. The one on the left gets no sun, and that's because he's the god of the dead, and he stays in the dark. And this statue right here has never seen the light of day in more than 3,200 years. All right, I thought that was a funny joke I made. Anyway, all right, built right next to Ramses and the same size as Ramses is the Temple of. Come on, give it to me. It's his wife's temple. I used to have the title of this up here. I need to fix it. But this over here on the left, that's Ramses. Notice that he's bigger than all of the other gods. That's how much of a narcissist he was. I'm sorry. Thank you. Nefertari, thank you. We got it? All right, now, back in the 1960s, Egypt was building a dam, and they were building a series of dams on the Nile. And a nearby dam was being built, and that was going to cause this area to flood. So this sculpture was built right next to the Nile, and when they build the dam, the water level will go up, and this will be underwater. So what they did is before the dam was built, they moved the temple to a higher place. They moved it to the top of the cliff. All right. So this was done. So basically, what they did is they cut the sculpture, they cut this whole temple up into pieces, moved all the pieces up top, and then reassembled them. So this is a model of the new temple or the rebuilt temple. And so it is up here, and you can see where it was underwater. So both of these temples were raised and put up on top. There's the old temple, and there's the water level, and then the new temple was built on top. And here they have there's photos of them cutting the pieces up and reassembling them with cranes. And they had to build a whole. They had to build a basically they had to build a mountain over here to put the temple into. All right. Now we're going to go to Karnak. Now, would you say Karnak is in Upper Egypt or Lower Egypt? It's Upper Egypt, yes, right, because it's lower in the picture plane. All right. So we're going to go and look at the Great Hypostyle Hall. So this is what it looks like today. This is a model of what it would have looked like thousands of years ago. And I've already defined hypostyle hall for you. We saw it with uh, the audience hall for Xerxes and Darius, or Darius and Xerxes. Anyways, we have another hypostyle hall here. And basically, it's a big room with lots of pillars holding it up. The central row has taller columns, and the outer rows have shorter columns. And if you look at these columns, the capital of the column up here has lotus and papyrus imagery on it. Here's another view of the center is taller than the outsides, and you can see it here. The center is taller than the outsides. And basically, you have a post and lintel system of the roof and these columns. The central row of columns is higher than the outside. I keep saying that. All right, and then we are going to have, I'll show you guys what it looks like now. I want you to know what a clear story is. Clear story, Clerestory, And in order to let light into this room, because otherwise you would have this dark room lit only by torches. So you create these little windows above. So you have this higher roof here. You create these windows, and it allows air and light in. When we get into Gothic architecture, they use clear story a lot to allow light into the churches. And clear stories are still being used today. Okay, everybody, we're going to take a field trip right now. So, everybody, stand up and follow me out of the room. Those of you at Cy Park, we're going to go to another part of the school. All right, so follow me out here. Okay, we're back. All right, this is a scene from The Spy Who Loved Me, a James Bond movie, and they filmed it right at the Hypostyle Hall. So I just want to play like a minute or two from this. But it gives you a chance to see some of the columns that are there, and it gives you also a sense of the scale of how large these columns are. By the way, that villain's name is Jaws because he has metal teeth and he bites people pretty bad. All right, we're going to move on because I want it, but that just gives you a sense of the scale of this. All right, we're going to move on to sculpture and painting from the New Kingdom. All right, moving on. Our first sculpture is Sinmut with Princess Nufra. Nufrua. Now, these are block statues. Look how blocky they are. It looks like just a big cube with like this triangle foot and then the heads stuck on top. And these were made so that the Ka, the spirit of the Horus or and the Pharaoh, could find an eternal home in the cubical image of the deceased. And what we're looking at is Hatshepsut's chancellor, her advisor, holding her daughter in his lap. And there's a lot of there was a lot of controversy at the time that she was having an affair with her advisor, and there's even drawings on the walls, like a graffiti that showed them in compromising positions. It was meant to embarrass her. All right, moving on. So when they make these paintings that are on the wall, first the artist sketches in black lines, and then the master comes by and makes corrections in the red lines. So it's the red lines, and then the sculptor would come around and uh, carve the drawings. And some sculptors specialized in faces, some specialized in figures, and then they painted it afterwards. So it's interesting to see unfinished artworks that shows us the process of how they made the artworks. All right, so we're going to look here at the fouling scene, and this is from Thebes. And this is fresco on dry plaster. I want you to know the term fresco. We're going to speak more about fresco later on, but I want you to write it down for now. Fresco, fresco. And there's different kinds of fresco. This is fresco secco, secco, fresco secco. It's two words, fresco and then secco, secco. And this is painting on dry plaster. So you build the wall, you put plaster on the wall, you let it dry, and then you paint on top of it. What happens to paint on a wall after a long, long time? It flakes off. And that's the problem with painting in the ancient world. There's very little painting of the in the ancient world. I think they did a lot of painting, but there's nothing that we can see because it flaked off of the wall. Or if it was painted on paper, paper does not last thousands of years. Now, painting on dry plaster, that dry plaster would come off of the wall. So next to fresco secco, I want you to write fresco succo, sucko. All right, because fresco secco sucks. It does it flakes off of the wall. Later on, we're going to look at a better system of fresco, and I'll explain it at that time. All right, this is from the 18th dynasty, and these are hieroglyphs, and the hieroglyphs say Nebamun is enjoying recreation in his eternal afterlife. So that's what tells art historians that a lot of these scenes are showing the dead person enjoying their afterlife. All right, he's with his wife and his daughter, and this is very similar to the hippo scene. But also look at the hierarchy of scale, how much bigger he is than his wife, and how much bigger he is than his daughter. And once again, hunting is a metaphor for Horus's victory over Seth. And Horus's victory over Seth is a metaphor for the justice over evil or vice. And then we can compare this guy to the Narmer, the Palette of Narmer, where it's almost the same pose. And it's almost the same pose as this. And both of these are hunting. All right, next we're going to look at musicians and dancers. Now, this fresco represents an annual funerary feast in honor of the dead so the dead can communicate with the living people. Does that sound like a movie you might have seen in the last few years? That's right. Anybody see Coco? This is basically the same thing. So we're going to look at this one part of the painting. Now, what I like about this painting is finally, we get overlapping in Egyptian art. Like the two figures are behind each other instead of next to each other on the ledge on the edge of the wall. And the musicians are overlapping each other. This is highly unusual in Egyptian art. Mostly everybody is next to each other instead of overlapping each other. So overlapping is now a thing. All right, this is in the wrong place. So next we're going to look at this pharaoh. His name is Akhenaten. And he becomes pharaoh in 1350 BC. And he marries Nefertiti. You might have heard of her before. She is one of those famous sculptures. We'll get to her in a minute. Now, before Akhenaten, the Egyptians practiced polytheism. That's the belief and worship of many gods. We got Horus, Set, Thoth, Gnum, Hathor, Sobek, Ra, Ammon, Ptah, Anubis, Osiris, Isis, and there are so many others. Like this doesn't even scratch the surface of the Egyptian gods. Akhenaten establishes a new religion and he bans the old religion. You are no longer allowed to worship the other gods. You must worship only one God, and that God is Aten, Aten. And this is the symbol of Aten. Look how these other gods are human like, but Aten is very alien. It's the disk of the circle, a disk of the sun, and there are rays coming out, and all the rays have hands on the end of it. That's the image of the god. And this is the world's first monotheistic religion. It's centered around one god. But it's sort of kind of monotheistic. Basically, Akhenaten is saying, yeah, there's other gods, but everybody's only allowed to only worship this god. So they're worshiping only one God, but not denying the existence of others. He closed all the temples worshiping other gods. He banned all images of gods other than Aten, and he ordered that images of other deities be destroyed. But the people didn't really like that. Akhenaten was despised by his own people, and he ruined their religion. Also, he neglected his duties. He was not a good pharaoh, and he didn't help his allies. And after he died, he was written out of history like a damnatio memoriae. His name was removed from the list of kings. Egyptians do everything they can to erase Akhenaten from history. Again, damnatio memoriae. But the reason I'm teaching you guys about Akhenaten, he did establish a new and different style of art. And during his reign, it was called the Amarna period. Akhenaten moved the capital of Egypt from Thebes to Amarna. And this begins the Amarna period. All right, now look at these figures and how are these figures different than other Egyptian art that we've seen before? What is it? That's correct. Yeah, they're not uniform. Notice that they're more curvy than before. The others were so angular. And then look at their heads. They've got these weird heads. Right? It's almost like they had an alien skull. All right, that was common for the Amarna period. So we're going to take a look at this relief sculpture right here, Akhenaten and Nefertiti with children. In the center, by the way, this is a stele. In the center, you see the god Aten, and then on the left is Akhenaten, and on the right is Nefertiti. He's holding one child, and she's holding the other two. They're commemorating a new events in Egypt, and the basically what's the purpose of this is showing everybody that the god Aten is blessing them with children. But notice their weird skulls, their weird bellies. Both figures are androgynous. They had the same body type, and the art style changed with the religion. And the sun has a cobra in it. There's the cobra. And once again, the sun has hands at the end of the rays, and then the some of the hands are holding ankhs, a symbol of eternal life. Akhenaten is holding a child, perhaps he's kissing it, and then there's a child on the left on the lap of Nefertiti. Another child is crawling up to Nefertiti, and that's showing them as family people. This is a scene of domesticity, a family life. And in a time when pharaohs had multiple wives, so they would have one main wife and other wives to make sure that the pharaoh fathers sons in order to produce another pharaoh. Akhenaten and Nefertiti had 6 children together, and they were all girls. And he fathered a son by another wife. But he and Nefertiti really loved each other. And this image promotes the idea of family values, that the mother and father should be seen as raising their own children. And this is very unusual for an artwork in the Egyptian era. Now, these sculptures of Akhenaten are really quite odd. What is odd about this guy's proportions? Do his hips look very like womanly? Like he has these rounded hips? All right. And he has this hourglass figure like a woman. He is presenting himself as androgynous. Androgynous means you can't tell if it's a man or a woman. And I think he was showing himself as a god, and gods are above gender. Like gods are both genders. Or perhaps he wanted to separate himself from ordinary people and show that he was different. Akhenaton. All right. Perhaps he really did look like this and he was deformed. One image of Akhenaten shows him nude with no genitals. So Aten is a god that is, and Aten, the god that he wants everybody to worship, is neither male nor female. So I think that's one of the reasons for all this androgyny, that he wants to show the god as neither male nor female. All right, and then we are going to look at the bust of Nefertiti as we get close. All right, this is Akhenaten's wife and queen. This is a painted limestone bust, and it was found in the workshop of the queen's official sculptor, Tutmos. And this is unusual. Most objects are found in tombs. And so art historians believe that this is a practice piece. This is not a like the final product. It looked like the sculptor was practicing on this one to make another one that was of higher quality, maybe made out of marble or a tougher stone. It is an unfinished artwork. The left eye socket does not have the crystal in it. The word Nefertiti means the beautiful one is here. And the finished eye is they only used a temporary material in it. It is not a precious stone. So that's why they believe that this was a practice piece. Also, look at the composition of it, how it has these like really strong diagonal lines that go down towards the center. All right, I'm going to skip past her and we're going to go to King Tut, Tutankhamen. This is the son of Nefertiti and it was the son of Akhenaten. Tutankhamen is it literally translates as the living image of Aton. Now, when he becomes pharaoh, he restores the polytheism. So he gets rid of his father's monotheistic religion, and everybody is able to worship whatever gods they want. So that era of the Armana period where they're worshiping one god and had this other style, that was a very short little blip in the thousands of years of Egyptian art. And when I talk about the thousands of years of Egyptian art, how everything was the same, there's this one little hiccup with Akhenaten. He became a pharaoh at age 8 and he died at 18. And he is a minor, almost insignificant pharaoh. The only reason he is famous, the only reason why we know him more than any other pharaoh is because his tomb was forgotten and unmolested until the 20th century. So we're going to go to the Valley of the Kings. We've seen this map before, and we're going to go to this section right here, which is the tomb of Tutankhamen. Archaeology was tremendously popular in the 19th and early 20th century, and lots of archaeologists were trying to find lost tombs. And the king's tomb was found in 1922. It was opened in 1923, and over 5,000 objects were found in the tomb. Most tombs are empty because they were robbed thousands of years ago. So here are some photographs of them getting into the tomb of Tutankhamen. So this is the main entrance, and here is a chamber that had a lot of stuff in it. This is where the body of King Tut was, and then there are different rooms off to the sides that have different treasures. This is where they entered in. This is the room full of all the stuff. And then here is the burial chamber for King Tut. So this is the entrance, and you can see right here where the doorway had been sealed up to make it look like it was a wall. But you can see they did a poor job of it because you can see the difference between this part of the wall and that part of the wall. And when they took it away, you can see into the next room. And so these are all the things that King Tut would need in the afterlife. There is a chariot here, and there's even spare wheels for the chariot in case it breaks. And then here are these lion shelves filled with all kinds of stuff. And back behind the stuff, they found another room back there that had more stuff. And they started bringing all this stuff out from the chambers. Now, there's the curse of the pharaohs is a strong belief that anyone who disturbed a mummy or a mummy's tomb would be cursed. And this was a popular belief in the early 20th century. Let's see. And it was a almost like a rumor intended to preserve the sanctity of the tombs and to deter grave robberies. But when the main archaeologist died soon after opening the tomb, there was a media frenzy of the curse of the King Tut's tomb. Others died within months or a few short years after opening the tomb, but mostly this has been dismissed. Of the 56 people present at the opening of the tomb, Only 8 died soon after the opening. All the others lived long lives. So it's just a matter of coincidence that some of them died shortly after. But in the burial chamber, there is a coffin within a coffin within a coffin within a coffin within a coffin. And even when you get to the actual uh, uh, mummy or the actual figure, it is even within a sort of like nesting dolls that you would have like from Russia. All right, this reminds me of nesting dolls. But the final one is this pure gold coffin, and this one is a quarter ton of gold. All right, but we're going to look at the death mask of Tutankhamen. I know we're out of here in 3 more minutes. It's gold with inlay of enamel and semi-precious stones. Lots of gold. The eye makeup is lapis lazuli. The face is gold and silver combo to make it lighter than the Nemesis. The blue stripes are glass. There's hieroglyphics on the back, and it's a spell from the Book of the Dead to protect King Tut on its way to the afterlife. On the top of his Nemesis, he has the vulture and the cobra to represent the um, uh, unified Egypt. And all around the tomb, it's been painted. And we are going to stop. We're so close. All right, with the judgment of Hugh Nefer, basically there are they are Hugh Nefer is being led through the underworld by Set. His heart goes on this scale, and a feather goes on the other side. And if your heart is heavier than a feather, then this creature will consume you. You do not go to the afterlife. If your heart is lighter than a feather, you will be allowed to go into the afterlife. And I do know that this artwork will be on the test. So here he's being led by Anubis, the god of mummification. You pray to Anubis for a successful mummification. There's the heart, there's the feather, there's Amit, the creature that will devour your soul if your heart is heavier than a feather. And here is Amit. I like these pictures right here. And then there is Osiris, who allows you into the afterworld, and Horus is directing him to Osiris. So we are going to stop there. That finishes us for Egyptian art. Are there any questions about anything that we've seen so far? Yes, sir. Yes. I'm going to put in grades for the progress report. If you did not have your sketchbook ready for me to grade, if it's not finished, leave it in the first period tray. And also, if you did not have your maps, leave it in the first period tray. I will grade it this afternoon. I turned in my schedule for grading last time, and you didn't put it in. Yeah, so put it in the first period tray. All right.